Hello and welcome to this comparison between the Inkwell Ideas creature decks and the recently released official creature decks, monster cards from Gale Force 9. This is what theirs look like, and find one of ours here. So that kind of gives you an idea of the finish or the cardstock. In their case, they have a thicker cardstock. It's also got a more laminated finish, kind of like what their other cards are. If you have their spell cards or their magic item cards. In our case, our cards match what we've done for our side quest decks, our NPC cards, our other creature cards. It's kind of like a Magic the Gathering type card with there is a finish on it, but it's not a laminated finish. But definitely theirs are going to be more durable, so they've points for them on that. In a couple of cases, they've gone and done a double size card, and that's let me hold it like that, and there. In order to kind of fit all the rules on one side. It's kind of strange, like in a couple of cases they don't really need to. For example, here with the rugged smothering, there's really only a few lines there, and that there's plenty of room on the other side, so it's kind of odd that they chose to do that, but they did. Whereas what we do to fit things, we've actually got all of our creatures on one card in a couple of cases. Like I think the vampire is one example. We split it into two separate cards, but it's still standard size cards, and you would just grab both of them. And that gives us the advantage that if you want to put them into 9 pocket page sheets like you do with a lot of trading cards, you can. Whereas with theirs, you would probably have to, I think that they do make a 4 pocket page that you could use for something like this, but those are a little bit harder to find. Anyway, so that's the quality of stock issue between the two products. Next is the art quality. They're using the book art. I mean, I'm sure if you looked it up, you'd find that the animated armor has that picture. There's no background to theirs, whereas with ours, let me actually cycle through the deck that I have here. We've worked with a number of artists to come up with new art, including backgrounds for the creatures. Get past the demons here and devils, but yeah, we've worked with a number of artists to get those put together, and I'm pretty happy. I think that the art is pretty comparable with it. I think you'll probably find 1 or 2 artists that maybe you don't like, but somebody else would like more, and vice versa. That's just the nature of working with a number of different artists. In our case, actually, one of the artists that we worked with a few years back to be putting these together is Jason Rainville, who went on to do some of the most recent covers. So again, I think that makes a good case that we found a couple of good artists to work with that turn out great work. So this is by him. The background was done by someone else, but he had done that, and he's also done. If I scroll down here to our Medusa, he did the Medusa as well. So again, I think that the art quality is comparable. Ours won't be instantly recognizable. If you've got some players that kind of might meta game, they might know, hey, that's a ghoul, whereas in our case, they might not know, is that a ghoul or a ghast or a zombie or something else? So we've got that small advantage. Next up is cost. So they've got, between the two products that they've got here, they broke them down to challenge rating 0 to 5, and this has 170 some cards, and another deck here is challenge rating 6 to 16, which has another 77 or 74 cards. So it ends up being about 250 cards for $40. One of those is $25 and the other is $15. In our case, we've got them broken down by creature type, and we've got 4 different decks. One deck, and let me just come back here and I'll let you see the list of who's in each deck. But here we've got the aberrations, fiends, and celestials, elementals, and fae in one deck. And then in this deck we've got all your beasts, oozes, and plants. In this deck here with the constructs, giants, humanoids, and undead. And then in this deck we have the dragons and monstrosities. And then we sort of have a fifth deck that's kind of semi-optional in a way, and this is NPCs. And so we took the 23 NPCs that were allowed to republish and put those into the deck here, and then we added another 27 more that kind of filled things out. So you had, maybe there was only one type of bard in the NPCs that we could use, so we added a couple of others that kind of give you a lower level and a higher level bard, for example. Yeah, so we've got that, and so it works out to being, in our case, we've got the 4 decks. They're between $12 and $15 each. So ours end up being a little bit more than theirs, a couple pennies more per card. The differences, the reasons for that is we're doing a smaller print run, I'd imagine, than what they're doing. They're probably able to do several thousands or tens of thousands of cards or decks in their print run, whereas we're not. We also are paying for all of the art that we have. Every time we do these decks, some of them are new, and so we have to, some of the creatures are new, and so we buy that art, which I'd imagine is less expensive than licensing it. And then finally, we've got we print in the United States. Because I've got family from China, I don't want to support that government, so we don't print there. And so we print in some Western country. It just happened to work out best for us to print with one of 2 companies in the United States that we've worked with. So that's the cost issues. Moving on to readability, let me hold up a couple of the cards back to back, or side by side, I should say. And so here you get an idea of what they look like, the readability printed. In our case, our font is actually quite a bit bigger than theirs. Theirs is maybe a wider font, but ours is definitely a taller font. And we print, we set them, most of them, to be 9-point, but if space is tight, one of the ways that we condense things down onto a single card is to go down to an 8-point font. But again, that's still larger than what they had printed at. The other way that we improve or we condense things down is by going to like a caveman English. And if I go, actually better to go into like this deck here, would have a couple of cards like that. If I scroll down, for example, yeah. So here with the Tarrasque, so you can see like multi-attack, we condense it onto one line. The whole meaning is there. You know, you can know, okay, it's Frightful Presence, then a bite or swallow, 2 claws, a horns, and a tail attack, and so it's all there. But if you went with the book's description as is, you'd have 2 lines, or perhaps even 3. So that's how we're able to kind of condense things down. We drop articles like the and a and as needed. But in other cases, some of the cards, aren't as dense, so we're able to fit them all in pretty much as is. We'll drop some things, like for snow camouflage. I'm almost positive that the description would start out with, the winter wolf has advantage, so we'll just drop that and kind of make it somewhat consistent. Creature selection. This is another thing. Actually, you saw there a moment ago where I had the Tarrasque on the card. They don't have any creatures above CR 16, and you're not going to use those that often. So in some cases, that's not as big of a deal. But in other cases, it sort of is. Well, in our case, we're not able to use a number of creatures such as Beholder and Mind Flayer that were never released for third parties to use. However, I mean, they don't put the Beholder in either, which is kind of strange. They also don't include the Adult and Ancient Dragons, which most of them would be in the CR 6 to 16 deck, but for some reason they don't do it. And it's Dungeons and Dragons. You've got the young and Wormling, but you don't have kind of the most popular dragons, if you will. Whereas what we do for the dragons in particular is scrolling up here. So we'll take the dragon, do the adult version, put the art on the front side, put the adult version on the other side. Then we'll do a second card where we've got the ancient version, and then we do the young and the wormling on the back of that second card. So we've been able to put them all like that. They also don't have any animals in their deck. So this entire deck of beasts that I showed you briefly, and you can see the list of creatures there, they don't have any of the animals in their deck, or well, I believe they do have the oozes. I don't think they have the plants either, but I could be wrong. You can probably find their checklist and know for sure. I don't want to make the video too long to look it up. But so yeah, they don't have any of these. So if you're a druid or a ranger who might be changing shapes, or might be have an animal companion, you're kind of out of luck. Whereas with our deck, you've got all these choices. And then finally, like I said before, they don't have the NPCs in their decks. Whereas we did this. This is kind of the fifth deck that you could consider picking up. So in summary, I wish that there was a clear winner, and I think that to be honest, I think that if they had a lot of the creatures, they don't, there would be a clear winner. However, until they do a third or a fourth deck that picks up the different beasts, and then another deck that maybe fills in the gaps of creatures that they don't have, I don't really think that there's a clear winner. They're more durable and have some creatures that we don't, but we have a number of creatures that they don't. So I think in summary, I'd say, you definitely, even if you picked up their deck, or you already or you're planning to, you would want to get our beast deck. You'd want to consider our NPCs deck. And I didn't even get into the other decks that we've done. We've actually done 3 other decks of creatures converted from 3rd edition to 5th edition. We've done, we've licensed with Kobold Press the Tome of Beast creatures, and we've done 3 decks of those. And they've got the new creature the creature codex that they came out with recently, and we've licensed with them to start doing those decks. And we'll actually have the first creature card codex with the creatures from CR 0 to 2 out at PAX Unplugged, which we'll be at in a couple of weeks. I'm recording this in the middle of November. That's the first weekend of December, like this, November 30th, December 1st and 2nd in Philadelphia. And so we'll be there with those and debuting those there, and then we'll have them on our website shortly after we're back. So that's the comparison of the 5e creature decks from Inkwell Ideas and the monster cards from Gale Force 9 under license from Wizards. And thanks for your interest. I hope this has been informative.